You're at 109 right now.
But you don't hear me though.
All right, so I'm recording now. So
all right. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a podcast. How do we start this? What do? We just get into it, or
yeah, let's just get into it, man. What's up, Larry? How you doing, man?
I'm chilling, Arias, man. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon, evening, going into the evening, and you know,
Sir.
in LA.
Yes, sir. We out here in LA. We've been wanting to get together for quite a while. Me and Larry went to high school together. We've been friends for a long time now. And we've kind of talked. I've done some podcasts with Larry in the past, and it's been very thought-provoking, very interesting conversation. So we just trying to re-spark that. Something I've been wanting to do for a while is have a podcast where we talk about various things going on in the world, from hip-hop to politics to books to whatever. I have a lot of friends kind of doing the same thing. So I was chopping it up with a friend the other night, and I just hit you up, you know, kind of wanting to get it going, and just like how we've been doing before I started recording, kind of figuring out kinks and everything. It's kind of what it started today. I've been having some things on my mind personally. Noticed that when I was in Portugal recently, I saw there's been riots, these right-wing riots that have been happening in the UK against immigrants or people from other parts of the world who now UK, and so I thought it would be something really interesting to maybe discuss with else.
So it's a state. It's the state of affairs. And okay, for us, in America, in Los Angeles, we have access to this technology. We are educated. We are concerned about the world. So, in one sense, we're going to access the technology, and we're going to we're going to share our thoughts with the world and create community with this interaction. And because we have traveled the world, we also have insight. Not only, well, we have firsthand insight. We've seen things, on, like boots on the ground there. So we can speak from our experience. Even though, Los Angeles is our home base, we are going to give our Angelino perspective, but it's also a perspective that's informed by our international experiences. So we some bad mofos out here.
Yeah, man,
We ain't playing.
You put it perfectly. I have a friend, rest in peace. He used to
Hmm.
always say, think globally, act locally.
Yes.
And so the reason why I want to talk about this, people might think, oh, UK has nothing to do or America, whatever, but I see the connections, like this rise of right-wing, anti-people of color, anti-black thinking, white folks wanting to take their countries, quote unquote. So, with this new election that we have coming, definitely see some of these same things up. So what I've been seeing on TV lately is white folks in these countries rioting, doing businesses, African people who they perceive as. So I see those same type of trends. That could be something that potentially happen here. People who they see as try to eliminate the country.
It's a sad state of affairs. Anytime that sort of that ugly, the ugly head of that monster, rears itself and wants to, damage and destroy, things. Um, let's see. So you said you were in Portugal recently,
Lisbon.
in Lisbon,
Lisboa.
and what did you experience? Now there are a lot of Africans. There are Africans from the continent who are there, from Angola, and I'm sure I remember Angola is one of the countries mentioned. I asked Cape Verde. Okay.
Brazil. Guinea-Bissau.
Okay, so what did you experience? What did you see? Notice?
I mean, I was there as a tourist, and for me, it was really a positive trip.
Mm-hmm.
People were I didn't personally myself feel like I experienced racism or anything like that. But like I said, I was there as a tourist, and when I was there, I did get a chance to take this African Lisbon tour, where take you to all the places around Lisbon that have connections to history. And so, Portuguese started the slave trade. Fact. So they like to try. So they took us around different places. That, but also the person who did the tour is an activist. Portugal. He's originally from Togo, but he lives in Lisbon. So he was just expressing some of different types of discrimination that mostly African people who are from Africa, Portugal.
Yeah.
So it's basically the same story that you come to expect.
Yeah.
So they are marginalized. They allow you to rise, but only to a certain. Definitely barriers. People's mobility. So overall, I wasn't there long enough, and clearly was a tourist, so a different perspective and feeling that I
How long were you there?
there for about.
All right. I think I was there for 3.
What did you
Let me
experience?
see. I remember seeing. I was surprised by the African the African presence there. Um there were few that I saw, but they were noticeable, and it was like, okay, we're here, but I was also curious as to know, like, well, okay, what's your story, so I think I asked someone, and that's when I got the answer of Angola, and I was like, okay, interesting. um and it informed me that the black presence is there, but then also that they have histories and they have stories of their own that I wasn't privy to. I didn't know, and I was just like, oh wow, okay. But with regard to the tour, I went to Sintra, the Moorish castle. Well, Sintra, okay, they have a larger castle that is really the tourist draw, and everyone goes there. But then you have the Moorish castle, which is far older, and it's kind of like, I don't want to say dilapidated. I mean, it's a ruin. So you don't see the opulence, you don't see everything that was there, but you see the Moorish, you see the Muslim, the Islamic, um, representation from, Islam never depicted the human in human form, but depicted the sacred geometry, and always showed the shapes, the geometric shapes. So you see that, and you get that, um, and that was affirming, as a black man, to see that and to say, wait a minute, everyone's going over there to see that, but this is the real history right here. And if you're not paying attention, this is go over your head, and you'll just feel like, well, I'm not like them, and I don't have that. It's like, nah, you're not like us. They're not like
They're
us.
not like us. They're not like.
This is what it is.
Um,
So
was that the one where you had to climb all those steps to get to the top of it?
yeah, yeah, you have to make your way around there. There are steps to climb. There's a lot. There's a lot involved in that.
Isn't it
Yeah.
amazing though how they built? How did they build so many? That's one of the things that me and my brother-in-law. It's just a testament to the ability of our ancestors because those were Moors, people, Africa, building those things.
So also I was there at Sintra, and I saw for the first time a pair of dice that were 500 plus years old. And I was telling this to the students at Dorsey High School last year. I was saying to these guys, they were they actually had dice, and I was like, so gentlemen, that game that you're playing, it's hundreds, if not thousands, of years old. And they looked up for me like, what? And then they were like, okay, but we're still doing it. I'm like, all right, fellas. But it's kind of, that kind of informed me because I'm like, as an agent of, this imperialistic society, this imperialistic system, and this white supremacy, um, I personally don't want to be an agent of white supremacy and all of that. So I'm reluctant to step in and say, hey, stop doing that. You're acting like a doggone, bunch of, whatever. I don't want to give that speech. So instead I was like, hey, this is ancient. Let me give you another example. Oftentimes the students will put their hands in their pants, right around their junk. Men, the boys, right? Um, and I was here in Los Angeles, and I went to I went to San Gabriel Archangel mission. They have a picture. They have a picture of the native Indians, the natives that were there in the 1800s. It was painted, and these are black and brown Californian Indians, Native Americans, and they say history goes back 13,000 years right here on California soil. But you and I think we've never seen images, depictions of the natives who were here before us. And they say that there were only about 500,000 of them that occupied from North California and down to Southern California. Anyhow, I noticed that in the picture, their hands, at least one of the persons in the picture had their hands in their pants around that area. And so I snapped that photo and I brought it to the attention of the young boys. I said, you know what, fellas, look at this picture. I said, look at where their hands are. I said, what you're doing is ancient. It's hundreds, if not thousands of years old. It's natural. So that's kind of where I am, with all of this. Like there's I really try to zoom out, to see all of that. Cause blackness and being black is original,
From listening to you talk, I'm hearing that you're making like connections
Yeah.
between history, our shared history, connections between Moors and the things that they did, and Africans, Native Americans. There's all these connections, and so that's really what I wanted to talk about actually, because seeing what happened, okay, learning about experiences of people that's going to Portugal, knowing what people in are going, black people. I'm seeing these connections, and seeing, and all this in light of so-called diaspora. Oh, I'm Black American versus Jamaican versus Ghanaian versus Nigerian, Kenyan versus South African. All these like uh, rivalries within our own community. But when you see something like white rage being released on people, on black folks, people of color, it's
And they're
like,
not. They're not saying we're gonna attack the Kenyans,
Right.
we're gonna attack the South Africa, we're gonna attack. No.
Exactly. It's like anybody who's not from here is getting it. You know, like who looks like they're
Yeah.
not from here. Even if
Yeah.
you're so-called born here or whatever, not so-called, even if you're born here, you know, for generations, they still seeing you as other, as
Right.
not that, you know. So
Right.
it made me think, well, this should be the perfect um motivation for us to let go of some of these rivalries. I mean, it's cool to. I think it's
Yeah.
cool to have the identity as I'm a Black American, or this and that. But at the end of the day, we got to come together, some sort of Pan Africanist love, basically.
Yep. I think that is where we've always tried to go and be, at least in different movements and different spurts. I think that sadly we are insecure and we cling and we clutch, we clutch onto man's ideals, the ideals that are constructed, by man, rather than, looking at the universal truths, because it's the universal truths that if we abide by, like, go back to ancient Egypt, the laws of Ma'at. I'm not well versed in Netu. Oh, I forgot.
Meta
Netur
Netu,
Meta
yeah,
Netu,
you say
and
it
and
wrong
met
too.
and, and that just means Mother Nature. So what I'm saying is we have walked away. We have our minds have shifted from our naturalness, from what is natural to us, to some alien ideal that's man-made, and so that's where we are, rather than, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Um,
I don't know if we should be taking off our Nikes and walking barefoot everywhere. I like my Nikes.
I'm not
My-
doing it. But I mean, that does
but
bring to bear this idea of consumerism. Like,
yeah.
I don't think wearing Nike, buying whatever, is necessarily bad, but it's this ideal of becoming consumer as your. These things represent part of your identity at the cost of, because we have to live in our society. I mean, we'd love to not have to worry about money as well. I mean, period. But it's a fact of life, you know. But our mindsets can be such to where we are forward thinking above, transcending, ending the material. So with that being said, I was thinking, I have a question. So would you consider yourself a Pan Africanist?
I would love to. I would love for that to be a reality. Like, ideologically, I'm all for blackness. Um, for oneness, but sadly, there's I guess there are fissures. There are too many lineages, right? Like, I'm right now I'm learning about my Native American, potential Native American ancestry, and I have some inclination of my English ancestry. Very little knowledge of my African ancestry, other than the reflection of my complexion and my natural tan. Um, but I think I'm first off, I'm an independent thinker. I'm of the independent party, period. So I'm an independent in my approach. But I believe I'm a capitalist. I might not have the money to display or to show that I'm a capitalist, like a Jay-Z, like or someone who's flossing or whatever. But taking your passport and traveling to a lesser developed country is a stunt. It is a um what is it? It's a privilege, and I've taken advantage of that privilege. Particularly because I am a capitalist, because I am um I'm privileged having the blue passport, but I'm human at the basis. So when I travel to these countries, or when I'm in these other communities, I'm not looking to exploit, take minerals and I mean that's a whole ideological
You're not,
philosophical approach.
you're not a passport, bro.
I mean, we dibble and dabble, so but absolutely not in the strict not in this under the strict definition. Nah, man.
Oh, you're not there to exploit the local fare.
Nah, 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 nah. But it's a matter of I mean, okay, the passport bros, you know what? The passport bros could definitely be an extension of the white supremacist, mentality abroad. We're gonna go and rape and pillage, and we're going to exploit, and we're gonna take, you know. Um, Whereas, as my approach has been, it was, let me get to know the culture, let me get to know the people, let me get to know the history, you know. So in that sense, that's what we were students at Hamilton of a humanities program. So we are about the human experience here. So that is what has led my curiosity about the world, my interest in humanity, the history, the cultures, the language, the foods, and stuff like that. The passport bros. I mean, that's a brother. Hey, a brother does get lonely, but has he has been lonely, but um, yeah. With regard to Pan Africanism, it's a nice ideal, but in reality, when I think of how difficult it is to for Pan Africanism to be realized, I think of Ethiopia. I think of all the ethnic groups in Ethiopia. I think of all of the struggles and the strife between those ethnic groups. And if there's no harmony in Ethiopia, where I believe we all come from, that's Mother Nature. And if there's disharmony there, then I think the struggle is always going to continue because they don't get it right.
I think that's interesting because I agree. I also consider myself to be a humanist. But I think the same thing that you said about Pan Africanism also applies to humanists. Like we're all humans, but we all whether it's Europeans versus Europeans, Europeans versus Africans versus Asians, we're all humans, but we are still finding to
Mm,
have strife amongst each other. So for
mm,
for me, I consider myself first, but also a African isn't the lack different. Not it's not the lack of harmony. I don't think that's exist. Period. But for Pan African, feeling some sort of cultural with Africa, Africa, all of us who are in, it's feeling a connection and a shared history, even though we do have lineage, still
mm.
feeling the shared connection, not only in a philosophical, importantly in a political sense. Well, maybe not more importantly, but in a political, the life out black people, all the different people.
Well, let's go back to I'm with the definition as you have defined it. Yes, I'm a Pan Africanist, and one of the yeah or a number of the examples of Pan Africanists are W.E.B. Du Bois, but also John Charles Robinson. John Charles Robinson was an American born black man who became an aviator during a time when he could not attend school to learn to become an aviator, and he had to be cunning. One of the ways of his cunning, he they didn't admit him as a student to the aviators class. It was all white. He had to be the janitor, and he fixed his schedule. He changed his schedule such that the classes that he needed to attend, he would sweep up and clean those classrooms in the back during those classes, and he would listen to the lectures, and that's how he learned. That's how, in one instance. But then he became an aviator. I think he went to Paris. I know there were other aviators whose careers led them to Paris, and then that's the only way that they got an opportunity, because Paris was giving out aviator licenses to blacks without discriminating against them. But John Charles
Reading up
Mhm.
about him right here, and called him the Brown Condor.
Yeah.
He was educated, one of the people who initiated college for black pilots, but he also served Imperial Ethiopian Air.
Now think about
That's
that. A
Pan
black
African.
man, exactly.
Yeah.
And he's the example. I'm all for African. If we're gonna do it like this, because he comes from, where was he born? From Florida.
Florida, yeah.
He was born in Florida, but he makes his way. So it's the war. It's
It's
the
Italy.
Italo-Abyssinian War. He goes there, and Emperor Haile Selassie, you know, welcomes him, rolls out the red carpet. He becomes the top aviator, and he serves the last Ethiopian emperor. He serves him, and to this day, we have Ethiopian Airlines because of him. We had the Tuskegee Airmen in part due to him. He was of the mind, he had the wherewithal to say, Ethiopians are black people. I would rather serve them than serve Italy or serve my country, America. Yeah. So that's the kind of example that I would want to share with everyone. Like, you see what that brother did?
Great
N-
example, and I know I had never heard.
Right.
That's like a real example of Pan African. It's not just wearing a cheeky,
No.
eating African food, which we know he did since he lived in Ethiopia, obviously.
Oh yeah.
Connected that way as well. But it's beyond that. He actually skills.
That's right. Now check this out though. The While the war was going on, the message was being spread throughout America that, of course, the war was taking place, and there were black men who wanted to enlist on the side of Ethiopia, but the U.S. government said, "You will not. If you do that, you will become a traitor, and we will not allow you." And so basically, they shut that down. They're like, "You Negroes are staying in America, and that's it." But there were black men who said, "Well, we want to fight on the side of Ethiopia. Those are our brothers, and we need to protect them." But America was like, "No, thanks."
So how did he get there then? Was he in Paris and then from Paris he went?
It's been a it's been a minute since I read the book. I'm familiar with his story. If Paris is part of it, then that would make a lot of sense, because you had Eugene Bouillard, you had Bessie Coleman. These are two aviators, two blacks who had to go to Paris in order to become aviators, because they were not allowed to in America. So if John Charles Robinson made his way to Paris, then that would explain it. But if he didn't, If he didn't, he had a damn difficult time in America because racism. So,
Like he started as a
mm-hmm. Yeah.
these are things people need to know about. Like, I really want to like, production.
Right.
Okay, my putting a light specifically. People don't know.
Yeah.
So have nothing. Typical story.
Um. Yeah. So your question was about Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanist. Am I one? And I said, he's an example of a a supreme Pan-Africanist, but also W.E.B. Du Bois, because Du Bois is buried in Ghana. Du Bois,
First so Pan African.
and and the controversial thing that I learned about is with Marcus Garvey. There was a lot of talk with that brother. Okay,
Poison.
but Garvey, the reason why I wouldn't give him as much credit is because he had never been to Africa. Garvey had never been to Africa. There was a comment, I think Yvette Carnell on YouTube mentioned that there was a letter written that Garvey even praised members of the KKK. And if you've never been to Africa and you're telling Africans to go to Africa, you're acting as an agent of white supremacy. You're doing their bidding for them. Hey, trust me, this is what you should do. How'd you come up with that idea? You never been there. It's what they want. I'm gonna get paid off of this movement. That's the way I look at it.
Interesting. There's been a long history of white people, black people. I'm not saying that
Mm.
specific wanting, also wanting. Reason why I asked you about Pan Africanism, brought up Yvette. Why I asked, she's one of the main people who shit the ADOS movement. They shit on the idea of Pan African. For a little while, I've always, for a long time, I've identified Pan African. I get where they're coming from, but the more I thought about it, I don't see how it serves to delineate ourselves, connect our perspective. Yes, I do consider. I haven't heard. Obviously, but like no one has ever mentioned that we're from some. I consider myself an American. People are building what architecturally, economically, everything. But that doesn't connect tap back to people people they shit on Africans and Pan Africans. This, and I'm like,
Yeah. So even I mentioned my buddy Big Mike. He's the same way, and he's like he sounds like Tariq Nasheed. Even these tethers describing and and you know and then yeah, I'm
I just don't see how
and
it's
I mean
productive.
exactly. Um, all right, let me bring in some more names here from the American experience that I recently learned about. Okay, wow, this is deep. All right, first topic, Black Indians.
Ooh, I just read that book recently.
Oh, you got it? You got a
Yeah.
copy?
Oh, yeah, it's amazing.
So I got the man. KRS-One mentioned the book in one of his presentations. I scrambled to find it, couldn't find a copy of it. I go into my mom and dad's library, and there it is. They hadn't touched it, looked at it in 30, 40, whenever it was produced, but they had a copy. I grabbed it. I'm like, this is mine. The reason why I bring it up is because Indians, Native Americans, found that it was better to call themselves black than to identify as Indian in America, because like the law of the land was kill Indians on sight. It was on site. And so that complicates our identity, when people are finding it advantageous to call themselves black. The um with personally, I think I'm a Seminole. My dad says that we're part Seminole or something like that. I don't know. But
Have you read Black? Did you read Black Indian?
I have the book. I listened to the audio book.
You didn't.
So
Have you listened to the chapter about the Black Seminoles?
I listened to it. Haven't tell me what you remember about it, because I don't remember off
First of all, the Black
top of the
Seminole
head.
chapter fascinated. Obviously, Florida back in that time wasn't necessarily a part of America, the States. Florida was a Spanish territory, and it was a lawless place. The Spanish really didn't have control over it, and so a lot of Africans from North Carolina, Georgia, etc., escaped. From when they escaped to Florida, and they learned how to live in the swamps, which is very difficult. And so there are these Indian wars that were happening in like Georgia, that, and so a lot of Native Americans who were refugees from those wars escaped into the swamps as well. That's where they blended with black people that were there. That word Seminole means way or wild person.
Yeah.
These people were considered like wild people, and so like that chapter, and so the Africans taught the Native Americans who came there how to live in the swamps, because the Native Americans did not live in those swamps. The
Well,
only
that's
reason,
fascinating.
and black people had to live in those swamps, like to survive, to escape. Like the only place we
Yeah.
could go was those swamps, because that's where the white people couldn't go. They didn't know how to live there. So we learned how to live there first as African Americans. And then the
Hmm.
Native Americans came and blended in, and that became like a black / Native American tribe. So like, and they became like the fiercest warriors. They were like some of the fiercest warriors that um, that America has seen, to the point where the Spanish actually adopted them to fight a lot of their battles against Americans.
Hmm.
Obviously, there's a long history of Black Seminole, so there's different periods of times. There's of the Seminole
Yeah.
Nation. There's different periods of times, but early
Hmm.
on, like when it first started, it's people were like initially like runaway slaves who combined with Americans, sure of a culture. But one thing I have, I definitely, my family, people have always talked about us being like part Blackfoot Indian. I know
Hmm.
there's like a huge push today Black people to identify with some of our
Yes.
native heritage, and I do.
Yes.
It definitely is there, for a lot of us. But one thing I've learned, if people have done a lot of DNA tests, Black are. I mean, obviously it varies. Average Black person actually has.
Hmm. Now, yeah, the whole topic of Black Indians is very controversial because the the idea that comes to mind is there's even racism within the nations. Like today, the average Native American that you see on television is going to be this light skinned, light complected person. But I'm of the belief, no, not the belief. I'm of the knowledge that all First Nations peoples were of dark complexion, of darker hue, until the European came and poured a little bit of that milk in the coffee and turned it. I mean, this is so when I don't see a very dark complected person and they're representing Indians, I'm like, come on now. Um, but that's and then also there were, I saw this on YouTube, Native Americans who were basically, I think they outright said it, if you're Black, you're not a part of our nation. You cannot be. You're not full blooded. You're not. And it's like, come on, man. There's a long history, and um, let me see. Here's something else. I didn't know that the Indians, the natives, when the wars were happening for the territory in America, Native Americans would cross the border into Mexico, and they would disrupt the Mexican farmers and merchants and what have you. So much so that there were Native American Mexican wars, battles, strife. And I thought Native Americans and Mexicans would probably get along, but they were very disruptive when they crossed the border into Mexico. That's an idea. That's a fact. That information is out there. Something else I learned. I'm all over the place with these facts, but this is information I learned. A guy named William Ellis, a Black man born into slavery. Um, Toward the end of slavery, he went from Texas, across the border into Mexico. He spoke Spanish because he was already in Texas and he was already around Spanish speakers and what have you. But he would travel to Mexico for work. He was hired out by a white man. He becomes a millionaire and he takes on the identity of a Mexican. He can do that because of his complexion, his I guess his phenotype. When you look at the brother, you're like, well, what is he really? I guess he's Mexican. He's on Mexican territory, so people let him pass. He even returned to America and spread the word that freedom was available for Africans, for enslaved Blacks in America. And he was trying to create a movement to come to Mexico. And there were so many, it said that the Africans who came to Mexico found that it was so difficult to live there because they didn't speak Spanish. They couldn't even get, as I read it, you couldn't even get tobacco, couldn't get anything to serve yourself. The conditions were so difficult and such strife. They chose to return to America, where the lesser of two evils, kind of a thing. That's an idea. That's a fact. Some people did that, but there is, I think, the city, La Ciudad de Nacimiento in Mexico, founded by Africans, formerly enslaved Africans who left America, founded a nation, founded a city. And Mexico abolished slavery before the United States, so that city is alive and well today. And they even celebrate a Juneteenth like celebration. It's called Dia de los Negros, the Day of the Blacks. So lot of stuff, a lot of things. California, you know the California flag story? California flag story is a bunch of white boys. Well, when America was being established, the word was out that California was the next territory to be to be expanded upon. And some white boys got the idea we're going to take California even before the rest of the union comes, because we can do that, because by the time they come we'll have more support, but we're already going to take over the land or take over the area. So some white boys, 44 some odd white boys got together, or men got together, 7 of which were black men, African Americans. And these men, some were slaves, some were free men. And they were a part of the Bear Flag movement. And the result was they declared California for America, but they needed a flag. And the brothers were resourceful, and they were like, we need a flag, we need some paint, we need some material. And the brothers were able to procure the paint that made the very first flag. So we were there in every capacity, in every historic moment. We were there, but our stories, just haven't been, presented, especially not to us.
Yeah, that's real talk, man. It's so funny because I was talking to my wife about this a while ago. I think I was reading Black Indians. I was just like, exactly what you said. I was like, in every part of American history, we were there, like
Yeah.
in every part. And the thing is, it's just so complex to really make a blanket statement about any
Right.
in history in general, but especially especially we're dealing with Native Americans, even when dealing with white people, we deal with Mexico. It's you can't really make a blanket statement about anything because some people found refuge in Mexico. Some Native Americans enslaved Africans.
Yeah.
Some Native Americans considered themselves were more aligned with blacks. Some Native Americans were more aligned with whites. Some white people helped tons of black people become free.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to make any blanket statements. It's just really complex. It's a complex thing because it's not like today where we're like so connected through internet and phone and all this stuff. Shit, I remember when I was living in Nigeria, there's this idea of tribes, right? There's idea of like the Yoruba people, right? You think the Yoruba people were like one people. But there's one city might be 50 miles from another city. That 50 miles back then was like, it might as well have been 500 miles, like today you could drive 50 miles in a day, but back then, so you have all these different variations of Yoruba. Like people speak variations of Yoruba from one little area to another. You wonder why. And it's really because they were isolated from one another. Same in American history. Like what was going on in Florida is not the same as what was going on in Missouri. We were all there. There were black people there, but their experience is going to be vastly different, but maybe still similar based on racism and shit like that. But it's like really hard to make. I've learned to try not to make so many blanket statements about what it was like because it's just gonna be different for like different regions and different.
The conquistadors, some of them were black. The European explorers, the credit might go to the Italian explorer, the Spanish explorer, the English, but there were black men. They probably weren't called blacks. They were Moors, but they were Africans, and they were right there with them. Conquistadors, explorers. Every bit of history we've touched it. We were there. But they say that it's our identity. The African was stripped of his history, his language, his land, and if we don't know, what our God-given gift is, according to natural law, you know, Mother Nature. We don't know that. That's the part of our being that doesn't get expressed. But when we do know, when we do have knowledge of self, when we do have this, then we have this more, we have a greater connection to our humanity. And then no matter where in the world that you go, you access, you tap into that network. You know, it's like Wi-Fi. Before there was Wi-Fi, because the brother Big Mike, I tell you about him, when we were in Saudi Arabia, yeah, there were white boys. We were like 80 some of us who were teaching there. Many of them were these white boys. And Big Mike said, hey, I don't care what the politics are. If anything pops off here, I'm just gonna blend into the crowd. he said, you white boys can't do that. And it's true. It's like I went to Ethiopia. I'm sitting at the bar. Here comes one of the attendants, and he's speaking to me in Amharic. And I'm like, bro, I don't. He's like, oh, I thought you were Ethiopian, man. I'm like, no. I go to you know, Saudi Arabia, and I see brothers who look like the brothers who are in LA, but none of them spoke English. They all were speaking Arabic. I'm like, come on, bro. Come on, you know Crenshaw, right? You know LA. You like, huh? Yalla Habibi. Yeah. Yalla Habibi, you know. Shukran, you know, Afwan. You know. Yeah, but
So, all right, man. So I'm going to a concert in a little. You ever heard of Krang Ben?
nope.
Krang Ben is this dope, it's this dope band from Texas.
Mm.
It's not much singing. It's guitar player, bass player, and a drummer. But it's super dope. So me and my wife going to a concert, Hollywood Bowl. So, but yeah, let's keep this going, man. I mean, let's
For sure.
obviously we could create like a format or some shit. Have people come talk, come up with topics and have people come.
Can this be expanded to how many people can
be expanded? Because I have a couple of boys. My boy Sadi, who lives in Miami, super brilliant dude, photographer. We've been talking about doing stuff like that. Yeah, I got a bunch of people.
Okay. Let's do it.
All right, man. Let's keep in touch, man. Well, shit that works for me is creating a day at a time. Have it set aside. But until then, let's keep in touch. So, I'm gonna shoot you a copy of this.
Okay.
Recording.
You're at 109 right now. But you don't hear me though.